Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of It's Not the Ref, because sometimes it is the ref. We've got with us tonight Roland in Windsor, Clark in Detroit, Guido in Richmond Hill, and missing again is Brian. He's not here, guys. He's missing. You know, I have a theory on this.
Go ahead.
My theory is that he's not over the Toronto Maple Leafs loss yet, and he just can't bring himself to talk about it on the show.
That could be true.
He's gonna listen to this, and
that could be true. He's still in mourning, still in, I don't know, call it what you want.
He said he wanted to, and then he's like, no, I can't. Then he's like, yes, I can. And then he's like, no, I can't. And then he can't. He's not here, right? He's enjoying a nice dinner, actually, with a family member. So hopefully he's having a good time. And we'll just give it to him now and when he comes back. So
all right.
Hey, so I thought I'd kick things off today with we never got together right after the first round, right? So we made some calls,
right,
on our sheet, and here's what we've got. We all called Carolina to beat the Bruins, and they did. We all called the Penguins to beat the Rangers, and they didn't.
That was a close
right?
series. Yeah.
I thought I called the Rangers. Are you sure about that?
I'll look at your card again, but if you did, I'll take it back.
I have no idea who I actually called.
You called the Pens.
I believe you.
Pens, but
this time.
Yeah,
the Pens were up 3-1, and then they kind of imploded like the Leafs. They just,
I don't know if they imploded like the Leafs.
Nobody implodes like the Leafs.
Right. Nobody implodes like the Leafs.
But 3-1, and you blow it. You blow the series. They had no goalie. The Pens had no goalie. What was their goalie called? I forget now. But he was Dominguez or something.
Yeah, Louis Dominguez or whatever.
Dominguez.
Yeah, their third string goalie playing most of that series. That's pretty incredible. They did what they did.
Yeah. But some of the shots, even the players were just turning their heads and skating to the bench. It's like, oh my God, that went in. But what can you do?
Yep. So now we got the Rangers and the Hurricanes, and of course Tampa Bay and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Leafs later, but close series, I guess. Tampa looked a little bit more normal this year, right? I mean, $18 million less. So
the thing I was saying throughout that series is that the Lightning reminded me of the '99 Red Wings. It just didn't look like it was there.
Right.
And I mean, I can't believe they made it past Toronto, and I can't believe they won Game 1 against Florida. And I guess don't bet against the defending champs.
Roll, you were saying you think that they're going to take this against the Panthers now.
Yeah, the way they've been playing, whatever. I think Vasilevsky there was asleep against Toronto. He looked horrible, and he's picked up his game now, and he's like, yeah, nothing's getting by me. That was the round where, I was bad, and I'm back to my old self. And Tampa just has that intangible thing right now. I don't know what it is, because they lost a lot of players from last year, but they're playing well again.
I still think the Panthers are gonna come out on top in that.
I didn't like how the Panthers looked in the first round.
Me too.
They won, and they they were better than the Caps. I mean, that's pretty clear. But they were not as good as they looked in the regular season.
Right.
And if Florida can't turn it around, they're going to get smoked by the Lightning.
Maybe that last game against the Canadiens, when the Canadiens blew them out, just killed their psyche.
9-1.
Losing to the Habs demoralizes you.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, the last place team who got the first place pick.
Yeah, how's that work out? Guido, you like conspiracy theories. Draft just happens to be in Montreal. Worst team gets the first pick. I mean, I was told a couple of years ago the worst team didn't deserve the first pick.
Who said that?
Lots of people. Oh man, there were a lot of people saying that if you're that bad, you don't deserve the first pick. But I don't hear a lot of those people saying that when it's Montreal getting it. So,
hey Clark, I'm with you, man. The Wings should have had the first pick overall, and they weren't tanking; they were bad, just like Montreal was
awful.
Bad. They deserved the first pick. Yeah, I didn't like what happened to the Wings either.
It's worked out though. If we're banking luck for the future, I'm okay with that. Maybe next year, that'd be a good year to win first overall.
I don't know if Gary Bettman loves the Canadiens that much to make it a fix like that, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the whole lottery thing when it comes to the draft. I am and I'm not. Part of me goes, if you're that bad that you're finishing last, you should get the top pick. But then what do we deal with? Do we deal with the fact that you're gonna throw the season to pick first overall, or we're dealing with, is that really how the draw happened, and was it fair? And half of
I have no doubt that the draw is fair. There are too many lawyers involved for it to not be fair.
Right.
It's rare that teams take a whole season. I mean,
not over that length of time, right?
The Matthews draft, to a certain extent, Toronto did not intend to win games that year. And then you go back to the Penguins and Lemieux, not even Crosby, because that was the lockout lottery. So there are very few times that a generational player is there for the taking and a tank is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So I like the lottery rules as they are. I like that you can't win over and over and over again like Edmonton did now.
Right. Edmonton had what, like 5 picks in a row? Like, come on.
That didn't work out either way. Guys, the one thing I wanted to point
out.
Well,
I mean, they got McDavid in the end, so eventually it worked.
Yeah.
Sure, I guess. I mean, they still haven't made it past the second round.
Okay, getting players worked. Whether or not they were able to build a team around them, their goalie is still Mike Smith.
Yeah.
Another topic.
Who they have? Like Taylor Hall,
guys, check out. I want to point something out here, though. When in the brackets, Tampa Bay won.
Oh, we're still talking about the brackets?
Yeah, Tampa Bay won, and Guido, Roland, and Clark picked Tampa. You know who's missing from that, eh? Dun, dun, dun. The same person who's not here tonight is missing. Brian, who constantly says, "Yeah, Guido, you're a Habs homer." He picked Toronto. He picked his home team. They didn't make it though. And then we all got the Panthers right. So that's that side. On the West Coast, on the west side of the house here, Calgary and Dallas, we all picked Calgary, and that happened. And we all picked Edmonton, and that happened. And we're going to talk a little bit about them a little bit later. We all picked Minnesota, and we all got that wrong. I didn't know what to do in that series. And then the last one, we all picked Colorado, and we got that right. So we're not doing too bad. With the exception of the homer pick from Brian, if he would have went with us on Tampa, we would all have only gotten 2 wrong. So,
I'm willing to cut him some slack there, because I mean, Toronto should have won that series. I wasn't willing to go with them because don't bet against the defending champs, but man, Toronto should have won that series.
I think
the Leafs are going to
have won. I think they could have won that series. I don't know that they should have won it, but I think they could have won it.
But you know what they got, though? They got respect in the
In the
lineup,
handshake line. Yeah.
in the handshake line. They got respect, and not like they did the other year. So I don't know what Montreal said to them last year, or what Columbus said to them the time before, or what Boston said to them twice, but they mustn't have got respect.
I know what they said.
But this year they got respect.
They
So
probably
that's
said-
got to count for something. I don't know. Sheldon Keefe was happy that they got respect. So they won something.
I don't even know. I don't even know how you make that comment, but whatever.
Yeah,
He's got to say something. So
that was a brain freeze on his part. I think after he said it and talked about it for 2 minutes, he thought, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." But
so we talked a little bit about. I said we'll talk about the Flames and the Oilers. And what was the final score? 9-6, I think. The Flames. I never would have imagined that would be the series where it's 9-6. Because Calgary against Dallas seemed starved for goals. I thought maybe Edmonton might rally it, but I had no inclining that Calgary would put in 9. But then
I think if you look at Edmonton's goalies, you can make sense of them putting up 9 goals against the Oilers.
Well, now, yeah, right. I look at that and I think, yeah, well, look at the Edmonton goalies, right? But with the team and McDavid and Draisaitl and Kane's been playing great, and I thought, no, they're gonna do something here. But I guess there was a bit of a penalty situation, and some folks were upset with what happened because Tkachuk came out of the box before his teammate and ended up scoring a goal. And folks were like, well, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. It should have been the offsetting penalty guy that went off with Edmonton. And but in the NHL rule book, it says when multiple penalties are assessed to both teams, equal numbers of minor and major penalties shall be eliminated using the coincidental penalty rule. And any differential in time penalties shall be served in the normal manner and displayed on the penalty time clock accordingly. Okay, sounds good. This is where it gets interesting. When the minor penalties of 2 players of the same team terminate at the same time, which is what happened to Calgary, the captain of that team shall designate to the referee which of such players will return to the ice first, and then the referee will instruct the penalty timekeeper accordingly. Now, Clark, who's the captain of the Calgary Flames?
The Calgary Flames do not have a captain.
And so
but one of their alternates is Tkachuk. And so I kind of love this idea. I don't know who talked to the ref. Maybe one of the other alternates was over there saying something. Like maybe it was someone else. But I love the idea of Tkachuk saying, no, I'm coming out first. Betting on himself. And hey, it worked out. And we were talking about this a little bit beforehand and everything. I had no idea this rule existed. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but I learned something new, and I respect that. And I respect the Flames for taking advantage of that. I don't know how it works. I don't know if the refs prompt them and say, hey, who's going to come out first? Or if the Flames needed to come to them and say, hey, in this situation, we want Tkachuk coming out first. But they were smart enough to make the right call there and have the player that best advantaged them come out first, and credit to them for that.
Can't blame the ref. It's a good goal. Followed the rules.
So did he? I didn't see the play. Did he score coming out of the box? Yeah. On that same shift?
Yeah. Wow. By the way, Clark, this is for Jenny. I'm saying it. I'm not blaming the ref, Jenny.
This time.
Jenny's been hammering me on the ref stuff, but it's fun. I like it. It's I'm glad she listens. Yeah, so there we go, folks. That you have I don't think it was wrong. I get why people might have been confused by it. I'm actually impressed the league had a rule about it.
There's absolutely that. The league actually had a rule to cover this situation.
Right.
Given how often they seem to be making stuff up on the fly, that's kind of crazy.
It must have happened in Toronto at some point. That's anything that happens in Toronto. There's always a rule that comes out of it, right?
You know, to be honest with you, I never heard of it before you brought it up. I've never heard of it. It's like, really, that can happen? You just make the call and say, hey, I'm coming out first. I'd never seen it before, or nobody's talked about it before.
I would have never looked it up if Matthew Tkachuk hadn't done it. So.
There we go. Yeah.
Anyways, from one crazy thing to another, Clark, I got this one for you. I think you're going to enjoy this. The Arizona Coyotes, or Coyotes, or however you want to say it. Next year, they're going to play in front of 5,000 people, if 5,000 people show up, at their temporary arena. And what they can't do, part of the contract, what they're not allowed to do is put their logo at center ice. They can't paint their logo on the ice.
So that's not actually true. What the contract says is that they can't change the markings on the ice from what Arizona State puts down. Supposedly, there is a deal between the Coyotes and Arizona State to put down both logos.
Oh, so that's new. I didn't hear that.
Because it's not necessary to be in the contract. Supposedly there is a side agreement that says they're going to put down both logos. I don't know if it's like the Coyotes logo on one side of center ice and the Sun Devils logo on the other or something. It's still going to look super minor league for an NHL arena, but that's what we've come to expect in this case. But it's not as bad as it sounds, because Arizona State's doing them a favor and putting their logo down for them.
I guess. I mean, at that point, you're playing in front of 5,000 people anyways. So what's sharing a logo with a minor sports team? No, I thought of something else they could have done. I thought, well, the arena sells advertising on the ice. So why don't they just buy advertising and put their logo down on the ice?
Is it that difficult to switch logos back and forth? I don't know. Is it?
It shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, I've seen it done before and everything. I've seen it done immediately after a game. I mean, ages ago in Detroit, where they had a different sponsor for one game, and after the game, they came out and scraped the ice back down and got that sponsor off of it. But over a season, I imagine that would, I mean, you're scraping up the ice unnecessarily, and it is to a certain extent a branding thing for Arizona State. Right. That, hey, they've got the Coyotes over a barrel here, and they can say, you know what, we want our branding on there, because it's a win for Arizona State. They're going to get their logo out there during NHL broadcasts.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more interesting thing about that contract as it came out is that there's basically a good behavior clause where Alex Morello, owner of the Coyotes, has to not be in the news for doing shady stuff, and he's basically always in the news for doing shady stuff. So it's going to be real interesting to see if the Coyotes even last out this deal, or if Arizona State gets tired of them and kicks them out.
How is Gary Bettman so stubborn?
Yeah,
that he's got to make this Arizona thing work out when he's got Quebec ready to go.
Yeah. Can you see him? Could you see him doing this with a Canadian team?
No.
Could you just say, okay, you're going to play in our local rink, it's probably bigger than Arizona State.
Well, you know what?
But I can't see him doing it at any other place.
He might do it for Toronto. He might do it for Montreal.
Would he do it for Winnipeg?
I don't know that he'd do it for Winnipeg. I don't know that he'd do it for Calgary or Edmonton.
The last time we saw it with Winnipeg, I mean, back in the 90s, no one wanted to own them in Winnipeg. It didn't matter what rink they were playing in or anything like that. I mean, we've talked about this before, that the big sports leagues don't force owners to sell if they can absolutely avoid it.
Right.
And Alex Morello still wants to own the Coyotes. The league doesn't really have a whole lot like to get in there and say, you know what, you're playing in a community rink, we're going to force you to sell the team because of that. I mean, talked about it before, that if you can force the Coyotes to, if you can force Morello to sell the Coyotes because of that, you can force other owners to sell their teams for all the shady stuff they've done over time. And none of those owners want to be held to that. So they'll let him play in this rinky-dink arena, and it'll look horrible, and Quebec will get screwed out of it.
There is a code. There is a code to owning an NHL team. We saw it when Balzilli wanted to get
absolutely
NHL,
yeah.
And he wanted
play
to
nice
Hamilton, and he had the funding to do it, and he just wasn't. He didn't do it the Gary Bettman way, and so
he had a rink too. He had a rink to go to.
There was a code. All I'm saying is there was an owner code. So the owner code only applies when Gary Bettman wants it to apply.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
Owners.
I mean, I've said this before. I don't think it's just a Bettman thing. Now, I think that some of Arizona is a Bettman thing. Some of it. I mean, if the owners as a collective were really that worried about it, they would do something about it. But I think this is probably a Bettman pride point, and he's willing to go to bat for the Coyotes. And so the rest of the owners are willing to say, all right, Gary's on board with this one. I'll go along with it. It's not bothering me so much that I'm gonna kick Bettman out. But if a couple of years from now it's become a problem, I think that's when you start wondering what happens. There may be a lot of teams that are willing to say, all right, I'll give it a year or two and see what's going on here, but I'm not making this a long-term thing.
Arizona Coyotes are not going to be in Arizona over the long term. This is all.
I don't really think so, but
you think they are?
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. I do not think they're long-term unless that Tempe deal happens.
So why wouldn't Bettman just say this? You know what? Why don't we do it? Why don't we run a test? Why don't we move this team to Quebec for 1 year while this arena gets done? We'll use it as a pilot in Quebec. We'll really see if that's where things are at and how the market goes. Why wouldn't he have done that?
Because it went horribly with the NBA. When New Orleans was in Oklahoma City for a couple of years, and Oklahoma City showed that they can take a team, but you've got to give New Orleans back their team because they could take a team too. And how do you take the team away from New Orleans? So then you have Oklahoma City buying the Seattle Supersonics and screwing over Seattle to get them their team. It's a nightmare. You take the Coyotes to Quebec, and they do well. I think it's safe to say they would do well.
They would do well.
And then Tempe says, okay, we're going to build you your arena. Do you take them back from Quebec and say, oh, well, we got our deal in Tempe like we were waiting for. So, all right back to the desert. And you screw over the Quebec fans again?
I don't know if that's true though either, because I think he's still looking to expand another team. So at that point, you go,
they're perfectly balanced right now. I don't think
Quebec works, right? Why not? You don't think they're going to expand one more team or two more teams?
I think if anything, I think they're holding Quebec in their back pocket for Florida. I think that's always been the plan. That like Florida has had issues, and there's kind of been a clock on them. And I think if that eventually they give up, then you've got the ability to relocate the Panthers up to Quebec without upsetting the alignment that
If
much.
Florida goes to Quebec before Arizona goes to, I already know there's something wrong.
But would you have said 11 years ago, would you have said if Atlanta goes to Winnipeg before the Coyotes go back to Winnipeg?
I never thought Atlanta was going to work.
I'm not saying that they would have worked, but it really seemed like the Coyotes were going to fall first.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And True North played it the way they needed to, like you were talking about earlier, playing the game and playing by Bettman's rules. True North came in and said, "Hey, the Coyotes are looking in trouble. If you want, we'll take them and bring them back to Winnipeg and do all that stuff."
Right.
And then Atlanta Spirit fell apart dramatically, and that left True North in the position where the NHL could say, "Hey, this team is about to be homeless, and we need somebody to take them." And that's the Atlanta and Phoenix situations are kind of similar like that. Atlanta, the Thrashers were about to be without a home, and the difference being their owners didn't even want to own them anymore.
Right.
The Atlanta Spirit wanted that team gone.
So what's the timeline on the Tempe arena?
It hasn't even been voted on yet.
So, but it's not. So we're looking maybe 2 years. And that's
why the deal with Arizona State is 3 years with an option for a fourth.
3 years. Oh, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
No, that's
Okay, can you imagine? I just want to throw this out there. Can you imagine this? It's not gonna. I shouldn't say never gonna happen. It's likely not gonna happen. But could you imagine if Arizona makes the playoffs and actually gets to the finals and they're in that arena? Do they play the Stanley Cup in front of 5,000 people in that? I'm sorry, we're way ahead here. I know, I get it, but I'm just sitting here going, what would how would they deal with that?
I'm interested in seeing it. I want to fly out there for a game. I want to see this.
Oh, you do it, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but I want to see it.
It would be a great atmosphere, actually. 5,000 people. It's like watching junior hockey, going to a junior hockey game. You're right there on top of everything. Yeah. NHL players.
We've talked about the South and the desert. Let's bring things back north for a second. So this was off the sick podcast with Tony Marinaro. And he said this. I thought this was cool. He said, "Is it fair to say that the Habs have been the most dominant Canadian team in the last decade? Number of playoff series won by Canadian teams in the last decade. You have the Montreal Canadiens with 8, the Canucks with 4, the Senators with 3, the Jets with 3, Oilers with 2, Flames with 2, and the Toronto Maple Leafs with 0. So even if the Edmonton Oilers or the Calgary Flames go on to win all of their series this year, the Canadians are still holding on to that as having won the most series in the last decade."
You know what? That doesn't mean anything to me. That the Canadian teams have been bad. All of them, like from top to bottom, it's been bad. They just haven't had good teams, and I think they were better before that, especially Ottawa and Vancouver had some good teams. But even
listen, you look at that. Arguably, the Toronto Maple Leafs have had one of the more skilled teams in the last decade.
And over the last 6 years, 7 years, they've been
right.
Yeah.
We've looked at that team and said, "Oh, they're gonna do it." Like, even if you don't like the Leafs, they're gonna do it. Like, they've got all the skill and this talent. They've got, but zero on the board. And then you look at the Habs and you go, everybody's all over Bergevin and what's his name there, the scout lead there who got let go as well. Timmins, right? Trevor Timmins. Oh, they can't draft, they can't pick, they don't have a good team. They've won 8 playoff series over the last decade. They're
okay. That's less than 1 round per year. That
that
doesn't mean they're good.
Okay, but look at the other teams, Clark.
Okay, I'm not saying that anybody's better. I'm just saying when you are saying most dominant is almost winning a playoff series a year, you're setting your bar real low.
And I think that the Habs kind of stacked up their numbers last year when they went to the finals too. They won 3-4 series there. So
and nobody expected them to. So
no, but you're right. The one there with 0, Toronto, over the last 6 years, to me, it's like they've been a failure. They've just been a failure. They may have great players, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Riley, Tavares, but they can't seem to win. They just don't know how to win. And they've been interchanging players. Oh, who are we bringing in this year? Let's bring in Jumbo. Thornton comes in, nothing. Spezza comes in, nothing. Simmons, whoever. It's like, it's not working out. And I don't know how they fix it because they have so much money tied up in 4 or 5 players. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work in Toronto.
Well, on that note, I wanted to share something else. The Leafs Tampa Bay fallout has continued here in Southern Ontario. It's Leafs lunch is still happening on some networks. I was gonna splash on here for you guys, and this really bothered me, but I was gonna splash on here the TSN, the Sports Network, on see how it was a slip there, not on purpose either, but the day after, right? You've got the Edmonton Oilers who dominated and advanced the second round, had a dominant game against the LA Kings. And the first story that we saw on TSN was, Leafs lose again. And I had to scroll down 4 other stories to get to the Edmonton Oilers advancing to the second round of the playoffs after that night. So this continues. The whole conversation is going to continue. It's going to keep going. These are a bunch of tweets that I collected, and there's more than this, but I like Sid Sixero. He throws out some good stuff sometimes, and he says, I'm not buying what I heard from the Maple Leafs front office today. Change is coming. If it doesn't, they've lost their minds. And then, you get a whole bunch of folks that go, hey, I got something to say about this. And you got Matt Woods who says, they just took the back-to-back Stanley Cup champs to Game 7 and got hosed by the refs.
Yeah.
After having their best season in franchise history, classic jabroni take. Now, did they get hosed by the refs? I don't want to be the one always saying they got hosed by the refs. Did they get hosed by the refs? And if Brian was here, he'd be saying, come on, Gui, consistency, inconsistency, consistency, which is it? Pick one. If it's not the Canadians, did they or didn't they? Did they get hosed by the refs? Did they get calls not against them that determined this series? Did they get a call against them in that final game that still determined this series? And people are still talking about it.
Shockingly, fans think that their team got hosed by the refs, no matter what team they're the fan of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't get hosed. They didn't get hosed by the refs. There were calls. They probably some missed calls here and there, but it went both ways. They weren't happy on a couple of 5-on-3s that happened. But Game 7, was it Game 7? They hit 3 posts. Matthews hit a post. Marner hit a post. If those shots go in, it's a different game, right? And nobody's talking about the refs or anything like that. It is a game of inches and stuff, and they just didn't get the breaks.
Well, Joey Beans says a bounce here and a bounce there, and they would have won the series. Tampa and Toronto were so evenly matched. Were they?
It went down to Game 7 and a close Game 7 at that. Seems like it was pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, I think it was evenly matched.
Surprisingly evenly matched?
I wouldn't say that. 3 of us picked Tampa to win. And Toronto was the better team all regular season. We still picked Tampa to win. So,
someone made a point the other day too, that those four teams in the East, they're all 100-point teams. They all had great years, right? And now two of them with over 100 points, they're gone. They're golfing with the Habs after 7 games, right? I mean, they're going to be close games. They're all close.
Well, Claude says this. Claude and I agree. This is the worst team Tampa has had in 5 years. I don't know about that, but the next couple, Braden Point is injured, and they weren't 20 million over the cap. This Tampa team is finished, and Leafs are too. So Claude is basically saying what I said. Hey, did the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning missed those players that they were able to pay that extra money to last season, those players are gone. Did it show? Is that what we saw? That they didn't have that same chemistry with those same players that they were able to play the Kucherov money to that helped them beat the Habs last year? And would the Habs have beaten them this year?
I don't think that's what it was. I think the top end players from Tampa weren't doing what they needed to early in the series.
But Clark, I think too, their third and fourth lines weren't as effective as last year.
I don't think they were as effective, but I still think that they've got decent, like a decent third and fourth line right now. It's not the same as last year, but it is still a very good roster, and they need a little bit. I mean, they need a little bit more from their top line players than they did last year. Yeah, absolutely, and they weren't getting it early on. Last year, the third and fourth line could pick up the slack. This year,
they did. Yeah,
so
they did.
With the Leafs, the whole conversation was this is now out there is that they're not going to do anything different. They're going to keep the same team. They're going to move forward with what they got. And you got other fans like Mike Sauro who said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Are the Leafs doing that?
Given that it's been like 5 days or whatever since they lost, I don't expect that they'd have put out their whole offseason map right now and be like, we are targeting this guy who's not even a free agent yet, so this is tampering to say so. And there is a ton of time to the summer is long, especially when you lose in the first round or don't make the first round in the case of some of our teams. But there is plenty of time for Toronto to make some decisions. They may look at it and say, holy crap, there are a ton of really good coaches available and we are going to make a change after all. They may look at it and say, turns out that with the flat cap, there are certain deals available that we didn't expect to be available. So we're going to make moves that we otherwise wouldn't have planned on.
So Clark, you got the keys to the Maple Leafs. What's the one move you make in the off season?
Oh man, the one move I make, it is hard to say that this needs one move.
I think make one. What would you make?
You're doing something about goaltending. Because I as much as I like Jack Campbell, you need something a little more definite. I don't know who that is.
He may not stay anyways, right? I think the
contract.
Yeah.
He's been on a dirt cheap contract, so maybe he's got to go anyway. Who knows what that is? Maybe that's Marc-Andre Fleury decides he wants one last ride with that team in front of him after all, and so he comes and signs a dirt cheap deal or something like that. It is too early in the summer to rule out a lot. So who knows what's going to happen. And if they did come back with that team and steamroll everybody in the regular season again, and I'm getting into something that Ken Holland used to do for the Red Wings, and I always hated it, that trades are hard in the summer. Let's look again at the trade deadline. What does the Leafs team, but that is important. What does this Leafs team look like at the trade deadline next year?
Yeah.
Because they made some good changes, like bringing in Giordano. I liked that move.
Yeah, me too.
It obviously didn't pan out because they still didn't get out of the first round. But maybe there's a better option next year at the deadline.
And I would hold on. I think I would hold on to Giordano. Some people are like, okay, move him out, and I'm like, why? Like he gives you stability, he gives you leadership. I hold on to him. I'd hold on to Spezza.
Because he's
I
39.
don't.
He's
Yeah,
39 years old.
I think you don't hold on to him this summer because you can get another Giordano at the deadline next year.
They
I
need
don't
help
know.
on
I
the
don't know
back
if you
end.
get another Giordano. I would keep the Giordano I have instead of gambling on the one I don't, hoping I do get him.
But the one you get then is cheaper because you only have to pay for him for the final couple of months of the season.
Sure,
And
but you still roll
because
the
the
dice on.
salary cap is something they have to worry about, cheaper is a big deal.
What couldn't the Leafs do during the playoffs this year? They couldn't. Their defense was like they focused so much on offense that they didn't put their defense in a position to be successful. And so, I'm going to ask you what you would do with the Leafs in a second. But what I would do, there's a lot of things I'd want to do, but the one thing I'd focus on is the system. I don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs have a system that will win in the playoffs because they want to score 6 goals, 7 goals. And you watch the transition game, their back end transition isn't where it needs to be for playoff hockey. So who do I want in that core? I want Giordano in that core. I don't know.
I would say then what you really want to do is make a change in coaching, because what you just described is the early 90s Detroit Red Wings,
right,
who brought in Scotty Bowman and got Yzerman to focus on defense. And that's actually, that's an oversimplification. Yzerman was always a good defensive center. He became an elite defensive center under Bowman. And so you need, Austin Matthews to be able to do that or something. You need the young players to not score 60 goals because you don't need 60 goals.
Right.
40 goals and some really great defense would be.
I'm with you. And I've said,
better for the team.
And when I say there's a bunch of things I'd want them to do, when I say system, well, one of those things is looking.
Well, you told me I only got to pick one thing.
No, I didn't want to mention those things, right? So I went with the system. But when you mention the coach, then I go, well, yeah, that would be one of the sort of things that you kind of go with, because that's where I think that philosophy. Yeah, okay, he scored 60 goals in the regular season, good, but that didn't help you in the playoffs. Rolly, what would you change with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Their back end, their defense, and their goaltending.
That's one thing. You can't pick goalie and defense.
Their back end, their defense. They need better better defense back there. I get rid of one of the top forwards that they have if they can, and try to bring in another good defenseman. With Riley back there, and then you can have other decent defensemen back there. But yeah, they need to fix that, because they're not going to win. This run and gun style is great during the regular season
when they can beat up on the Red Wings.
What's that? Yeah.
During the regular season when they can beat up on the Red Wings.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work in the playoffs, and that's why they can't get out of the first round. Year after year. And I do remember the Red Wings, Clark. They were, Yzerman was a fantastic forward, scoring 100 points year after year after year, right? And even the offensive players with Fedorov there, and then the other guys came in. But then, boy, did they ever tighten up on D, right? And they had a goalie that, even Chris Osgood was a good goalie. He wasn't fantastic, but he was serviceable, and he was a good goalie. And then they started to win. They started to win cups. So Toronto,
they almost broke Toronto. They almost broke Chris Osgood. They almost broke Chris Osgood in the beginning, though.
The San Jose series, when he let in the late goal in Game 7, he was in tears after that.
I remember that. I looked at that thinking, oh, is he gonna be back?
That's one of the things. But I am an unapologetic Chris Osgood fan. I think he's better than a lot of people gave him credit for. Being behind those teams, that he was mentally tough after that. He said, he sat down with himself and said, I am never allowing that to happen again.
And how many cups did he win, Clark? What do you have?
3 at the end. Yeah. He backed up Vernon for the 97 one, but then he won in 98 and took over for Hasek to win in 2008 and was a game away in 2009. That 2009
He
series
became mentally tough. You're right.
Yes. And I think I'm sidetracking onto a Chris Osgood thing here.
No, it's okay.
That 2009 series, if the Wings had managed to win Game 7, Chris Osgood is the MVP of that series. He's got a Conn Smythe, and now he's getting a Hall of Fame consideration. Yeah. That's one game that changes how you define his career.
Yep.
I like Chris Osgood
because he was the Wings MVP
me too.
That offseason or that postseason.
It wasn't, you know what, to be the goaltender for that era of the Detroit Red Wings was not an easy thing to do, and I thought he did really well in that role, right? And and maybe that too, right? Like taking nothing out, Jack Campbell did a decent job for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. Like he bounced, he had some rough patches. We talked about it, and I said, ugh. Is he really the right goalie? But he really kind of showed, I've arrived. This is who I am. He did that through a bunch of games in the playoffs. There wasn't a meltdown or anything. So even he had that resiliency as well. It just didn't work.
But his team melted down in front of him though. Like almost every other game, they'd win 5-0 and then they lose 7-3. Then they'd come back and win, and then they'd lose big again. So
but we could say the same thing. We could say the same thing about the. You keep putting me in this position where I got to defend the Leafs a little bit. You could say the same things about the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? Like they had those same games where they had those meltdowns and did the same thing. So I don't think it was something that was exclusive to the Toronto Maple Leafs or to Jack Campbell. It was the style of game that they played, which was a very open game, end to end, a lot of transition, and in those. I think, I don't know if I said it to you or if I said it here when we were watching a game. I said, you watch them play, and I was watching in those transition a lot of misplays or mishaps or turnovers, because it was almost like they were processing the game faster than they could play it. They were 3-4 moves ahead, and their stick hadn't caught up to their mind sometimes in the speed of that game. But it was both. It was both teams.
The speed of the game. They're incredible. Yeah.
And you said that in the last recording is when you said it.
Right. Yeah. So I did, right? Okay. So at least I'm consistent, unlike some refs in the NHL who are not consistent, or maybe they are consistent because Brian says, they're inconsistently consistent. I don't know. Here's what I know. We're out of time, and we had a good session, and you've got Roland, you got Clark, you got Guido, and you got Brian, who's 0-4 in May, just like the Leafs. We'll hope he'll be back at the next recording session. Take care, everybody. It's not the ref.